Hello and welcome on in, everybody. My name's Sam Peterson. I'm your host for today's stream with my good friend Wade Acuff. Wade, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, Sam?
Not too much, doing good. Excited for today's stream. I also just wanted to welcome on in everyone in the chat. If you guys have any questions for Wade today or anything like that, I will be here to feed those questions to Wade. Just want to say hi to everyone before we get going. I see a lot of people who haven't seen in a while in chat, so that's really cool. Perva, Jack. Idara, Patrick, Oliver, Marsha, what's up, everyone? Thanks so much for joining us today. Wade, if anyone's new
Yeah.
and they don't know who you are, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what we're going to be working on today?
You know what, Sam? That's a great idea. Let's do that. It's been a minute, Sam, so I just wanted to say hi, but let's go ahead and get into this. So I've got a little sort of presentation for everybody. It's gonna be super quick. This is in lieu of me sending you over to my Instagram, which, by the way, you can go and follow, if you'd like. But I just want to show some things that were specific and a little bit more specific to this stream. Okay, so it's telling me next slide, please, I guess. I think I wrote notes. Hi, Sam. Hi, Sammy.
Hey, Wade.
How's it going?
It's going
Okay.
great.
Yep, next slide. Cool. Everyone say hi to Sam. I'm going to wait for the responses in chat.
Hey, everybody.
There we
Glad to be
go.
back.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, next slide. Okay, now on to the work. All right, so for next slide. Okay. So for these, what I wanted to show, instead of just sending you to my Instagram, I've never really shown these. I've worked on a couple of Dungeons and Dragons properties books over the last year. So I wanted to show some examples of what that was. Uh, okay, so the note says good stuff. Hold on this slide a little bit longer. So Dungeons and Dragons goes way back for me, and still is ongoing. In fact, I just played a session last night with some friends. It's an ongoing thing, so I'm super proud to be working with this brand, and it's been a lot of fun. Uh, okay, I think we get it. Okay, next slide. All right, so let's get to the work. So this is from a book called The Shattered. Oops, I spelled it wrong. Imagine that. It's obelisk, and this was just a couple of images you can see. You can see some sketches here and just a little bit of some of the creatures, the refraction of Ilvash. So these names, you'll never get them. They always change. They're always kind of crazy. Then I worked on the deck of many things. There's a lot of this is all behind the scenes stuff, all the sketches, working with the art directors. There was a lot of kind of like lore building with this one, and this was a two-page spread, which let's see. So that's the spread that was over 2 pages, and it was kind of a constellation thing. But there was a lot of rune making and other stuff that they just kind of didn't have. So they were like, sure, go ahead. So I did that, and it was a lot of fun working on these. This is the deck of oracles, which is really fun to work on. And there's a little bit of a vapor thing going on the right variation of the variant. And we might do a little bit of that today if we have time. Let's see, next slide. Okay, so this is the Vecna Eve of Ruin book, what just came out. I think it just came out like a month ago. When they were like, "Hey, do you want to work on Vecna?" I was like, "Yes, please." Because I don't know, some of you may be familiar with the show Stranger Things, and he plays pretty big in I think the last season. But it's the same character, also known as the Whispered One. So when that came up, I was like, yes, absolutely. And the right image on here is a couple of friends of mine that helped me out with this. I took some photos, some reference. So Cammy and Derek, shout out. And there's also like a little smoke monster thing coming up. Again, we might work on some of that, and also the metal you see on the armor, the person laying down there. Yeah, we're gonna be working on those materials in specific lighting situations. Next slide, and okay, no more slides. I get it. All right, so I just wanted to do this as a presentation, just in case you guys didn't know. And this is not a plug because I was contracted to, but because I thought it was pretty cool. This was all done in Adobe um, Express, and it's just a little slideshow presentation. that I put together. Took about 15 minutes. But I thought that would be a fun way to kind of start off the stream, showing you something a little more specific to what we want to do. Okay, so with all of that, what are we doing today? Well, this is all about lighting and making magical items and enchanted things and those sort of things. So I want to get chat to start looking at and thinking about um, some options. And I have a little list over here, and I have some sketches. I don't think I'm going to give anything away. Let's see. So I have some pretty basic things going on here. But I have some themed items. So we've got a helm, a helmet. This is the helm of manifestation. Let's see. I can get into that later so we can work on these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you options. Chat, you can start choosing these options. We will probably won't get to all of them, but I'll give you the options first. Then I'll talk a little bit just about general lighting conditions, and then we'll look back at chat and see what they chose. There's the Pliant Client, which is a magical smoke bomb to help your clients kind of acquiesce to your decision making. There's a wand. There's
Like,
also a mug. But we'll get to these. These all have special properties that I've kind of written out a little thing about. But we'll talk about lighting first. Ta-da! We've got a sphere. Boom. But we're not going to get into specifics on lighting. There was another session, I think it was about a year ago, where I went into this a little bit deeper, and we're not like gonna hone in too much, but I do want to talk about because I want to work on metals. We're gonna be looking at how to kind of make some metal shiny objects. I know Sam knows a lot about that. Let's see what else we have. We've got some hair, some smoke, some other things. So we're going to cover quite a few things. How does
should
that
chat,
sound? How does it
sorry,
sound?
should chat be putting their votes in now while we do the lighting, or are we going to be doing
Absolutely.
that a
Yeah.
little bit
So
later?
we can do a poll. We've got mug, wand, smoke bomb, and helm. We don't have to do a poll. It can just be the loudest, shoutest,
Yeah.
whatever
I'll
that.
take note of what seems to be popular. So
Okay.
if you guys have an opinion, throw them in chat. I'll be looking.
I think I definitely want to do the smoke bomb because we're going to talk about metals and it's going to be made out of metal. So probably
Hmm.
going to do that one, but we'll see. We'll see what chat has because. All right. So we've got some basic lighting. So one of the things I do with lighting, and again, I'm not going to go into this super detail, but I like to draw a cone for my lighting. And it doesn't have to be the best cone. It just has to indicate what direction. You can probably can't even see that on the screen. Let me do this in white or something lighter. There we go. Terrible cone, but that's the point. It doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be there, kind of show you where the light's going to come from. The reason I do a cone is because it gives me some directionality if I need it. I'm not doing that so much for this. I will tell you where the light is coming from. But that's generally how I decide how to, what my lighting direction is, which will be important for some of these things. So there's that. And let me come here. So this looks like maybe a plastic or a metal ball, or sorry, a rubber ball. But just the basics to make anything shiny, you're going to add a highlight, which is going to be the specular shininess of an object. So you've got a couple of things here to decide how shiny something is. You've got specularity, which is the reflectiveness. And then you have glossiness, which is I like to think of as like the polish, how smooth something is, how polished something is. And both of those things determine the amount of shine something has. Because you can have a metal that is like, and I'll just do something. You can have like a rough metal, like a lead or something, that can be polished to a shine, but it's still going to have kind of a rough, look to it because its glossiness is not going to be, or its polish as it gets dulled or as it's dulled, it doesn't reflect as much as like say silver or something like that. But it's very simple. If this is our sphere that is lead and we polish it, essentially all that happens is you get a brighter highlight. And I'll just get rid of this. Let's see. So I'll get rid of this and we'll add just a little bright highlight. And I think I already have this done. Let's see. Yeah. So we have that over here as an option to look at. But if we want to like dull this out or add a little bit more specularity, you can make some adjustments to that. And also light direction really matters here, because if this is coming down and let's say we want to add like a bump or something in here, the part that is reflecting the light is going to reflect it back onto your eye. And then the part that is away from the light is the shadow area, and so on and so forth. So you can start to add, details. That's how we get the surface texture of something. And that's the basics. That's as far as we're going to go into this, because we're going to do a lot of talking and demoing as we go. If anybody has any questions on that, just hang on to them. I'm kidding. Drop them in chat and we'll take a look at it. All right, so I see a bunch of smoke bombs.
Yeah, we got a few for the
Okay.
smoke.
Okay, cool. Good. This is working out exactly like I planned it.
Perfect.
All right. So I'm going to turn that off and we're going to jump into this smoke bomb. So I did do a little sketch here. It is, let's see, I think I have this already. Yeah, I do have this on a layer that already has a mask that is cut out to the shape. So all this lets me do, and I'll just do it again so you can see real quick. I won't do this for every step, but we have our sketch. And if I want to work on a layer that is somewhat protected, I can take our lasso tool, make a selection around the shape. And the way I like to work with the lasso tool, if you look up here, you'll see there is the additive, the add selection. I just leave it on the add selection. Normally it's here, where you can press Alt or I think it's Shift, and you can add or detract from the selection. But I just like to leave it on add just so I can free-handedly just kind of grab stuff as I need it, and then just do a little loop. So what that's going to let me do, I'm not going to finish that. That's going to let me add a mask. So now if I want to paint in that area, it is masked and no problem. I won't go outside the lines. I'm actually a big fan of going outside the lines, and I don't use a mask all the time. But for this occasion, we are going to use a mask.
Do
But
you
I'm going to
use
use
a
the,
lot of,
go ahead.
sorry, wait. I was gonna say, do you tend to use a lot of separate layers when you're doing work like you were showing us earlier?
Um, yes. In fact, here, let me see. This might take a minute. Talk amongst yourselves. This might take a minute to load up. Let's see.
Just a reminder for chat, if you have any questions, definitely let me know. I can always let Wade know what they are.
Yeah, please do. Please do. I'm
I
just
was gonna,
trying to open something that would give you an idea of how messy the workflow is, but at the same time, it's
okay,
organized enough for me. So this is a little sneak peek for a print that I'm going to have at Gen Con that's coming up at the end of this month, beginning of next month.
super
Uh,
cool.
yeah, and so there's like tons of layers, lots of copies of layers. But a lot of these things are, let's see, like individual
Mm,
layers. And a lot of them are named, some of them are not. And you can see a mask here and there depending on, what I'm using it for. I think I had some selected colors happening, some shadow layers. So there, it just depends on what I know that I'm going to come back to. And more specifically for the work with D&D, I do make a lot of layers that I know that they may address color, or they may address wardrobe, or whatever it is. I definitely do make a lot of mask layers just so that it's easier to change. You know how that goes.
yeah, it gives you more flexibility.
Exactly. All right, so let's right. I think what I'm going to do with this is this area. All of this is going to be like made out of metal. Let's just say that. I'm going to go ahead and drop in a gradient. I just made I guess I could make it again, but um, first off, let's talk about the client, the client magical smoke bomb. It's recommended for contractors and clients alike. When clients aren't exactly sure what they want, it emits an enchanting aromatic smoke cloud that helps them trust the process and lets artists do what they do best and fulfill even the most complicated of demands. So that's what the client does. This is all fake believe, so we're not dosing anybody, I promise you.
It reminds me of those plugins you can get for cats to calm them down a little bit, make
Uh,
them a little less stressed, you know?
exactly,
The client
exactly.
version
It's
of
a
that.
client plugin. Yeah, there you go. I love it. All right. So yeah, we're talking about metals. I'm gonna go ahead and add this background. All I did was make a gradient. Literally just did a layer and then grabbed the gradient tool, and then did something like that. But just to show you how I did that real quick, it's super simple. And I'm only doing that because I think the smoke layer is going to be harder to see. But I am going to choose first. I think we're going to do most of what we're doing today is with a front light. So the cone in this case is going to be really steep, and it's going to be coming pretty much from the front, maybe a little bit upward. So let's work with that. And I may just fill this first. Let's see. Did I close? Let me close this out. This might be causing some issues. Okay. There we go. I'm just going to fill this whole thing up a little bit. And I like to do this with metal is just add the base color. Or we're not really going with color because I always like to get the values first and then jump into color. But then a lot of times, and I'm just going to do a lot of this on one layer. In fact, you know what? I'm doing all of the base values on one layer because I really do like to just paint. I like to get in there as if I'm painting traditionally. And so I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to paint this around. And you can kind of see how this is already looking like the spheres. There's another reason I kind of wanted to do this object because it is as close to the sphere example as pretty much anything we could have. And right now it's pretty rough. Like it looks like it might be a rough metal.
Is there a
Uh,
reason that you created a layer with a mask on it already and are painting on that as opposed to making a mask on one layer and doing a series of clipping masks?
no, you could do that. You could do that. That would be the same, essentially the same thing.
It's
I
not
just
like a
this
workflow preference or anything.
No, not really, not really, not for this because a lot of this I'm just demoing like how to make metal, so it's kind of the quick and easy way to do it. Not that it's not easier to do it that way. It's just how I have done it. What
Yeah.
Sam's talking about is I can just take a mask and or use this mask layer. And now if I want to add highlights to this, I can change this to like a color dodge. And so it will stay masked because of because of the layer it's clipped to. That's what you're talking about, Sam?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I always do the clipping mask thing, but I thought, okay, that's a way you can do it too. Wasn't sure if there was a
Yeah,
workflow
I kind of I
benefit.
yeah, no, at this point I kind of go all over the place. It just whatever comes to mind first. So
Yeah.
we could treat this like a sphere, as if this is where the light is mainly hitting. We've got our highlight kind of hitting between this area and this area. That's fine. But I thought it might be fun to add some curvature because these are kind of curved. Now, if these were just flat
Mm.
plates, I would probably add the highlight along this edge because what you're looking for, you know this, Sam, but for those at home, what you're looking for is where these light rays, I can't really draw on that, where this light is hitting, what is catching it? What is catching and reflecting it back to the viewer, and what is not? That's all you're really looking for when you're trying to add a texture. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just adding this little lip for that plate. But I thought it might be fun to add a little bit of a bulge to this. We could leave that. We could actually leave that plate there. But let's see what it looked like if we dipped into making this surface. Let's see. Am I on?
Yeah, I think that'd be a really cool effect. Like picturing that thing in 3D, having the little curves.
Yeah. Oh, I'm on color dodge. That's why. Okay. So I'm just going to add a normal layer, clip it. Sam's got me clipping everything now, but that's fine. That's perfect. But yeah, so it's a little bit of this where we get, just so we can visually see it. Um, we've got a little curve where this point is the height of the curve throughout each one of those. Does that make sense? Like if I were to draw stripes along the surface, that's what this curve would look like. So
Yeah,
that
at that
means, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say at that point, it's almost like you're kind of thinking of each one of those plated sections as its kind of own shape. Like
Yeah,
where on that is the light going to be hitting? Where would the shadow be? And then
exactly.
putting that in the context of the overall object too.
Exactly. So that's all I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to roughly, because that what that does is it moves the point of that light reflection a little bit higher because it doesn't reach the bottom of the curve as well, if that makes sense. So each one of these curves kind of goes back into space a little bit. That one's a little bit tricky. Let's see. So probably along here. And I'm just being as rough, pretty rough on this.
Mhm.
This would probably catch a little bit closer to the edge. But it would continue all the way down. I'm going to switch my brush up to the soft edge brush just to speed up things a little bit.
Oh yeah, that's good for this application for sure.
Yeah. And this back one may not even catch much of it, to be honest.
That's actually kind of one tip I would probably have for chat is, they people always talk about how much brushes help, like, it's all the fundamentals and all that, but there definitely are times where using the right brush for the right job can make everything flow a lot more smoothly. So I think over time you kind of find out like, oh, if I'm painting this or this
Yeah,
type of shape, these are the tools that I like for that.
exactly. And that's also another good point. Like, that's the reason we're talking about these fundamentals of like how to understand how light hits off of something and reflects back to you. A texture brush is not going to help you with that. Like it may make it look like, I don't know, stone or tree bark or whatever, but it's not going to help you understand how that light hits and how it
Definitely.
should reflect off of an object. And that's part of all of this. I actually don't like this as much as I thought I would. I kind of like the plate idea better. So I'm going to go back to that and we'll just stick with that for now.
Oh,
I thought I would like it. Uh, it was something I thought about right before the stream, and I was like, "Oh, we could make these," and it didn't always work out.
I mean, sometimes you just got to play with the ideas and see which one just
Yep,
feels right.
exactly. All right, so we were talking about rough metals and shiny metals. Right now we have sort of a rougher metal on the bottom, which I don't mind. I kind of like it. But I think it might be fun to add some shine, a little bit something shiny to the top. And I think I may actually make a new layer and just add it this way.
Jess has a question in chat. Jess
Yes.
asks, do you illustrate slash create in Photoshop exclusively, or sometimes in Illustrator, or with Fresco on an iPad, or anything else?
I do a good bit with Fresco. I do jump into Illustrator on occasion. There was I don't know when that was. I think it was maybe March or April. I did a little Illustrator thing. It really just depends. I'm more at home I think, in Photoshop. But yeah, it really kind of depends. Anything I've done with like the examples you saw earlier, that was all I think all started in from well, one sketchbook. I still stick by
Okay.
having a sketchbook
Yeah.
just to get started, to get the ideas out, and then I moved to digital. And with the D&D stuff, it was I think all sketchbook and then all Photoshop.
Okay.
Occasionally there will be a fresco stage where I dip into fresco because I'm on the move, like I'm going somewhere or doing something. But it's a good question, because there's always a discussion between vector or a bitmap, and it just really depends on what you need. I have done things where gone I've gone made something in Photoshop, but then had to sort of recreate it with vector for printing. I don't like working that way. I would prefer not to have to backtrack, um, but sometimes it comes up.
Yeah, I think Illustrator and vectors versus like raster, painting Photoshop, it's
Yeah,
often heavily dependent on what you're working on because usually the needs for painting in a more traditional style or drawing more traditionally or mimicking that traditional way of working is very different than the, kind of vector graphics that you might use. So it's usually just a very different application that is needed.
yeah. I'm gonna drop in a little shadow back here. I don't know that I'll keep it, but I just wanted to have it for myself for grounding, because we are talking about a little bit about environment. So I would say we have something that's shiny, possibly metal. You could come in here and make it even more so if you wanted to by adding, I'm just going to drop another layer down, unclip it. And then you could rough it up, if you wanted it to look tarnished. And think about if you are going to add tarnish and that sort of thing, think about where that would actually be on your object. Probably in the cracks and crevices. Uh, However, on the edges of things where you might have edges, like around these plates or around like anywhere, any surface that is easily and often touched, it's going to be probably shinier and not as dirty. Now, in the cracks, that's a different thing. Like it'll be probably pretty filthy and that sort of thing. But if you're trying to make something look rough, think about the wear and tear of the object, because that's really gonna help you push it to where you want it to be. Um, okay, so we're gonna be good with that. We might if we get on to the helmet, we'll address some more metal options. But I want to dive into the idea of this client smoke bomb emitting smoke, some sort of smoke. And in the example I showed earlier with uh, the priest kind of the monster with the D&D monster smoke monster thing, that's what we're gonna do here, and it's not as hard as you think it might be. It's and I'll do it in a couple of ways. I'll do it with a should I do this with a hard round? We'll do this with a soft round, I think, first. Actually, hard round might be better.
What about a hard and soft combo?
We could do that.
What did
You
you
know what?
use for your D&D illustrations, or did you kind of switch back and forth?
I just switch back and forth. I'm gonna go with a hard round, and I'm just gonna adjust the let's see, hardness to about halfway. Okay. All right. So again, this is a scenario of lighting, and we've already done the metal material for this. I mean, we could always work on that more, but I want to move on to this smoke idea. Um, and the lighting comes into play here as well because we want to think about I like to think about the type of smoke I'm going to do first, which is not like a vapor. I like to think about it as like almost a solid mass. So I might come in here and just let's see if I can grab it. Go ahead and make our mass. And I'm just kind of roughly following the sketch. none of this is going to matter in the end as far as the mass.
Kind of the graphic read of it at first.
Yeah, it's just laying out the shapes. It's the same thing we did, same thing I would do with a sketch. I just got
Yeah.
the shapes. But now I want to think about where this light is hitting. And since we've already done almost a spherical object, we have all the clues we need, which is why reference is really important. I haven't even mentioned reference yet. Please use reference when you're working on materials and lighting and all. Even set it up yourself. Um, one of the, let me go back to it if I can. Let's see. So on this smoke monster, I'm using the lighting. There's like magical light coming off of the body on the table, and it's kind of glowing, but it's kind of not. But I'm using that as the source of the lighting for anything I'm doing with the smoke. So that's exactly what we're doing here. But the good thing is we already have the example of the sphere right below. So I'm just going to start popping in big chunks of cloud. And for instance, like this part right here, this is uh the backside of the sphere. If this was a sphere right here, this is the sphere part that is in shadow. And that's all we're doing with multiple scales over and over.
Mhm.
And you may want to like, put these parts in more shadow because they're kind of hiding behind. And you wind up making a bunch of like crescent moon shapes, or something along those lines when they're hiding behind each other. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And this is
Little
very
lumps and
cartoon.
bumps.
Yeah, exactly. This is very cartoony at the moment, but that's mainly due to the soft brush that I made. I mean, it's not bad. It's not. I wouldn't be mad at this for a first run.
Yeah, it's a blockout, so you're really just getting the
Exactly.
basics of it.
Exactly. So that's what I would do if I was just working straight out of, Photoshop, and then with the brushes you have, and then you can start adding little crispy bits where you're getting a little bit of that uh the shadow that's being cast on the cloud behind it is peeking out a little bit. Not the shadow, but the highlight of that, cloud part is peeking out. So there's still room for hard edges, even though it is smoke. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think one thing that throws people off when you switch materials like this, like metal is very different than, this kind of amorphous cloud, but
Yeah.
the fundamentals of lighting and form are the same across all of it. So it's still like a form change equals value change type of thing where it's if the form of it is rotating, the light's going to follow. So I think if anyone in
Yeah.
chat ever gets intimidated by this stuff, just keep in mind like light kind of reacts. I mean, the fundamentals of light are the same across any object.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because the highlight you make on an object is not because of the object, it's because of the light. So if you move the object, the light, may react completely differently. In fact, it will react different. So that's a good point about once you have the basics for every object down, you can kind of at least get in the ballpark of what that object is going to look like in its own lighting scenario.
Yeah, then you just have to figure out specularity and texture, and that's kind of like a secondary thing.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we did this one way with this. Let's do it with the soft edge, hard edge brush, which is what I would have just jumped right in here with. And I'm going to back up. I'm going to just hide this layer. We'll do it again. And I don't know if I'm trying to get a read on chat. Is opacity always at 100 with my brushes? Yeah, pretty much because the brush pressure is built into my Wacom tablet. So I have a very sensitive setting. Um, and now with that hard round, it was with this example we just did, that was all opaque. So keep that in mind too, because I like working with the background at a grayscale, usually somewhere in the middle gray area, a little bit lighter. But I like to incorporate how I'm working up layers with the way the brush is transparent. And you'll see it a little bit more here because this is how this brush reacts. It has a soft edge and a hard edge. But if I keep going over it, you can see it's building up on itself. But what you're seeing is it's starting to get more and more opaque. That's all it's doing. And I don't know, it's just some way I like to work with this. And it kind of works out with clouds and vapor if you want there to be like wispy bits that you can see behind. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna build this out like I would the other one. And I'm already kind of just thinking about where my little spheres are gonna be. I'm not super tied to anything. Um, but what's great about this brush, and I'm not like saying you have to have this brush because we just did it with built-in Photoshop brushes. But if you reverse the angle, you get that little light peeking out behind that I was talking about. You can start to see it, getting your little spheres, if it makes sense that way. You can work them up where you're revealing either a big, sphere, a big mass of cloud, or a tiny little bit of cloud, a little bit here. And you can kind of just build it up as you go. It doesn't, there's no wrong way, there's no right way. But this brush really does help out with that. And you can flip it back this way and make it even more stark, like I just did.
Yeah, that one can be a lot of fun. You get a little bit of practice with it to know which direction to make the stroke for the effect you want. Um,
Absolutely.
but I've also definitely used that brush in the past before for wispy little smoke trails.
Yeah, it's a fun one. And again, it's not something I'm locked to. Also, I'm moving over to a smoothing brush, which all it does is it's just a smudge brush. I'm sorry. Super low strength, has some scatter. I think that's included in the link that I provided. It has three brushes. It has the hard edge, soft edge, and this chalk brush, which I use a little bit. Um, but that's the basic idea of making these, this cloud shape. It's not super hard. It just takes a little bit of one, don't be intimidated. I know it can feel intimidating if you've never done it, but that's like anything, right? I mean, if you've never done it, you're probably not going to go into it with all of the confidence. You could, it depends on your nature, but just getting some reps under your belt can really help. So that's one way we could probably add some of the smoke to this client. And we're not really done with this. I can add another light source. And I am keeping an eye on the clock because I do want to move on to a couple other things. Um, but let's add another light source. Let's say we have a rim light or something in the back over here. I'm going to add a new layer. Something over here. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think, with the smoke. Because let's say we have our new cone coming out this way. The first thing it's going to do is blast the edge of this. And we do have to make it into a material. You don't have to, but I feel like it better would be if you're trying to make the material seem like it's consistent, you want to make the part that's rougher, this bottom part, a little bit softer, a little bit as if it is that rough metal. Now the highlight still may be pretty bright, but there's a little bit more fall off. And what I consider fall off is this stuff. Not the highlight, which is in the middle. But that should indicate that, oh, this is really shiny still up top. But as it crawls down the edge, there's just a little bit of, hey, this metal is a little bit rougher. But that's enough for the metal. I think what the little gem here, I think, with the smoke. I'm actually going to make a copy of that just so we don't lose it. But I'm going to get rid of our guideline. And when we start to poke, let's see, make sure I have that. Oh, I set my Why is it so low?
And just a heads up to chat, Idar did post the link for Wade's brushes. So if you do want to play around with those, just check that link out.
Oh, thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. Okay, here we go. I was just on the wrong layer. Imagine that. All right, so just adding a little bit, a hint of this rim light over multiple locations. And it can be super soft. It doesn't have to be like overpowering. But just that little edge as it, clips some of these. I probably should have done it on its own layer, but that's okay. We've come too far.
And that's something to keep in mind. Like if you're doing rim light on a really soft object like smoke, it's probably going to be softer than, that light that's hitting metal because that texture is going to affect it. So, it's always good to be kind of consistent with like, what object are you working with here?
Exactly. And deciding like, at this point, is this rim light creeping over the top enough to actually hit this point? Again, you can take a piece of, I don't know, clay or Play-Doh or whatever you have. I use my kneaded eraser. I don't have it with me right now. Oh, maybe I do. I do. It's always in my pocket usually. Uh, Little kneaded eraser. I don't know why I'm
Case of
taking time to do that.
emergencies.
Yeah, it's sticky. Can you see this thing? You can't see this thing. So you could make a little blob out of this, turn your phone flashlight on, and be like, "Oh, that's what that looks like." Instant reference. Perfect.
Yeah, what you were saying about reference earlier, I think is a really good point because if you're trying to paint smoke or metal and you haven't really done it before and you're not familiar with what it actually looks like, you're just kind of guessing and it's hard to know if you're hitting the mark or not. But when you get like a reference collage together, you can
Oh yeah.
actually analyze like what makes that object or that material look the way it does and you can kind of mimic that. So I think reference, if you're guessing too much, you're doing yourself a disservice. So
Yeah,
definitely
that's a
good to have reference.
yeah, great point. I would not even attempt this had I not done this so many times. It's a great point. And honestly, if I went back and looked at the like I probably will go back and be like, why didn't I even use reference here? I should have had reference up.
Even
But
what you were saying about the metal object, like where it gets worn. So if you look at like an old metal object, you can kind of, find the logic behind like why does it look different here, or why is, a leather bag it gets worn on the corners a lot, and you can kind of take all this information and,
mhm, yeah,
use it
absolutely.
to create something believable.
And I don't just for sake of time, I wanted to address vapor, and I did one of these earlier as a test. So when you're talking about vapor, you're talking about clouds, almost still the same kind of way we would, not clouds, but they have some of the same properties. Let me see if I can pull this in front of our object. There we go. Actually, in front of, yeah, just do a little rearranging on these layers real quick. Okay.
Also, welcome on into Mercurial in the chat. Good to see you.
Hey, Mercurial, what's up? It's good to see you. All right, so I've got a little vapor going on here, and the only difference here, there's a big difference. Obviously, we don't have the big cloud wisps, the big puffs, as I'd like to think about it. But we do have, and right now I have them kind of pouring out of these holes. There's gravity that takes effect, and it's pulling down the mist. I'm not going to get into, obviously, I don't know it, but there is some science happening here about how this is being pulled down. But all I've done is observe what this looks like, and this is not great, guys. I'm not saying this is fantastic. I'm saying this is a way to get started. Um, and the smooth brush really helps out with this. Let me just do this one over. We'll try to get this one. So all I've done here is use this chalky brush, and I just kind of have made little wisps. The one thing I do note with this is as it cascades, use reference of waves. If you can't find reference of this kind of fog machine mist pouring over something, waves is a good reference because there's almost like this front line. You can kind of see me painting it down here, where things are a little bit thicker, things are a little bit more opaque. Um, but whereas in like between here, there's not that opaqueness. You kind of can see through to the object below. So as things kind of, as the, I guess the bulk of whatever strands or the mist you're painting, I wouldn't want to paint with this color as if I'm color picking this, because if I change the color, and I'll do this real quick, I don't know how good it's going to look, but I will, let's see, I will add a, oops, I will add a selective color to this clipping mask, and I'll come in here to our neutrals, and I will add yellow to this. Let's see, drop that out. And let's make the bright. Let's see if it's going to change anything. Not really. That's better. Okay. All right. So the reason I did that was so that I could show you that the if I were to color pick, even though we were working in grayscale, you wouldn't get this tone of what's behind it coming out. Does that make sense? Because if I were to use like the grayscale, then it would be this kind of a gray blob over the top of our mist, and that's how we want. We want kind of see through it.
Yeah, that's a great
So
tip.
yeah, just keep that in mind as we're doing this. I'm going to turn that off, not to have it be super confusing. But if there's like any details, you would also lose those, which you're going to lose some because it's going to be a little bit harder to see. But if that if that mist effect is what you're looking for, then just be aware that you're gonna want to see behind it. All right, where is my smoke layer? There we go. I've hidden it from myself. Okay, so I was gonna pull this one out real quick, and I'm just kind of doing the same thing I would do earlier. I think I had reference pulled up for this, uh, but to think about this as like billowing as it comes out is probably the best way. And there's usually like a couple of edges to it, like thickness wise. I don't know if any of this is making sense. Um, but you can cover these edges, and I'm doing this on purpose. I'm just kind of adding this thick.
Yeah, I think if you look at reference of this kind of wispy smoke, you'll see what Wade's talking about, where there's a lot of transparency in the middle sometimes, but the edges look kind of sharp and a little bit more opaque.
Exactly. And then you have the license to add a little wispiness outside of that as well. Because if you do use reference, you'll notice, and let's see, I think I have reference here. I think this is what I was using. If I can pull it up. uh,
I know there's those little things you can buy for your house that you kind of, I think you plug in and it, just kind of releases this like smoke type stuff that I
yeah.
don't know what it's called, but it goes down to the floor. Like there's probably tons of pictures out there of those things where you could get some really good reference.
Yeah, so this was a couple of studies I did, and you get the idea through these a little bit better than what I was just showing. So yeah, like on the left here, you can kind of see that wisp that I was working with, trying to pull that out. But that's sort of the idea we're going for. It's not going to be perfect, but just wanted to show that since we covered so much of the bulky mass smoke, that
Mhm.
there's more than one way to paint or draw something. Okay, I think we should move on because we are burning through the time here.
We also do have a question from Apurva. I guess it's directed towards me, but you probably have some input on this too, which is I think they're asking how long it took to finish the James Gurney books.
Oh man,
You have those books, right?
I do. I
So
do.
there's a couple classic James Gurney books. Light and Color is a very good one. There's also Imaginative Realism. I will say personally, I should really go back through my bookshelf and like consume the books properly, but I think they're great reference books. I think they're also just great to read through. And if something strikes you that's interesting, do a little study or exercise based off of it to really study and cement the knowledge. But I can't say I've been through them like in a specific thing of time. I keep coming back to them, and honestly, I need two more.
Yeah. Um, I do have those books as well, and I've kind of done, I think, more along those lines. The concepts I didn't understand or wasn't really, I was kind of vague on, usually in the realm of color. Those are the things I would practice. So you work on your weaknesses more than you do your strengths, and try to, pull everything together. I did the same thing with the Loomis books,
Yeah.
with perspective and that sort of thing.
Yeah, they kind
Right.
of become reference books that you can go back to.
Yes, exactly. So we have options. What else was that? We had a helm. We have the helm, mug, and wand. You know what? Let's just do the helm real quick because I do want to talk about hair, how scary hair can be. Um, but let's the helm of manifestation. Uh, let's see. It's a meditative helm that acts as a portable deprivation chamber to help you focus your thoughts and work on your mantras of manifestation. There you go. It does have some features. It has Bluetooth, which is powered by the Bluetooth. Uh, it's not Bluetooth, but it's Bluetooth. The Bright Hill Fairies. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. They're ethically sourced, of course. It's also ensconced with the mane of majesty, with the optional accessory known as the Unihorn of Unicorn. And I think I have. There we go. Yeah. So now the helmet is complete.
Little upgrade.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have the same thing here that we set up before. I've got a mask, and I'm just going to start painting. I think maybe I like the background we had going on. Just to add a little bit. I'm going to borrow that.
I gotta say, I was pretty intrigued by the wand, but that helmet sounds pretty tempting too.
We have time. I think we have time because this is going to be a refresh and then a little bit of talk about hair, I think.
Oh, I just mean that I want them in real
Oh,
life.
you want them in real
For my
life.
for my real life character,
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
upgrades sound pretty nice.
They can be yours. If you draw them, Sam, they can be yours.
I thought you were gonna say for the low, low
I
price, and
was
then pitch
I
pitch
was
this
gonna be
helmet
like
to me.
free 99, and I was like, no, it's all right. Okay. So I'm getting my if I can stay on the right layer, I'm getting my base in here just real quick. And then we're just gonna do it the same thing. A lot of the lighting we're gonna work with is kind of straight on. So I'm not a lot of guesswork for this. I'm just gonna come in here with kind of a rough highlight. Probably shouldn't be on the same layer, but hey, we're here. I won't say this is a highlight. This is like the base light, the core light. Let's drop a little shadow in here.
I also just want to draw attention to what you're doing here that I notice a lot of beginners don't always do, which is Wade is thinking of the entire helmet as one big
Oh
shape,
yeah.
the same way you would like a sphere. I think sometimes when there's a lot of smaller shapes and decorative bits, people try to render each one way too focused on that, but you really want to see like how the light falls across the big object first, and that really helps to get like 80% of the info in there before you get into any detailing.
Yeah, absolutely. And to what Sam's talking about, all we're dealing with now is a
Oh, hey everybody. We're back. There he is.
oh
The joys of live streaming.
yeah, we had a little bit of a power outage, but I think we're back. Where were we? We had a helmet I think we were working on.
Yeah, we were
I
talking
th
about helmets getting to hair soon, I think.
That's right. That's right. We're gonna skip all the metal work here. I will do one thing. That's right. The helmet of manifestation. I certainly didn't manifest that, I didn't think. But real quick, I think I was talking about this being a cylindrical object, and to make the metal on that, it's very simple. You find the point of refraction or reflection, and then you add a highlight, and then you've kind of got, a little bit of metal happening. It's not super difficult. So that's what we were adding to this. I'll just quickly make a little streak here. I was going to treat this metal around the eyes a little bit different, but we're going to get into hair because I wanted to talk about couple of ways to do hair. And you'll notice I don't have a mask for this. I don't have a shape yet. We just have this main sketch. Well,
Wade,
yeah.
real quick, I just want to let you know that while you were away, I did prime and
Okay.
prep them for hair by monologuing about it for 5 minutes.
Oh,
So
what did you say? I'm curious. I want to
no,
know.
it was the same thing we were talking about the helmets, the last thing we had said, and the smoke, where it's people get intimidated by hair because they focus on the strands so much, but it's really just the basic overall form and not to get caught up in the details. But
Perfect, perfect.
we're
Because that
ready
is,
for it.
yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about here is choose your hair shape. Whatever you're doing, do that first. I know in the fine arts education that I've had, there's a lot of talk about just build the mass. Just have the mass first. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna make a mass of hair. And I think I want to do this. Yeah, let's do it under the sketch for now. But I'm just painting out this mass of hair. That's all this is. And there's kind of a couple of thoughts on that. Like you can be like, oh, well, that's all you really need. And then you just add some highlights. And that there's some truth to it because if I just come in here and start going, well, I think the light's going to hit it like right here. Maybe I don't know why that's purple. Sorry, Val. Didn't mean to use your purple.
That's her trademark purple.
Yeah,
To pay
it was.
royalties for
Yeah,
that.
I had it on loan and I hadn't returned it yet. But if you just start adding, a couple of highlights here, kind of where these curves, there's a question of where are the curves? Where do you add the highlights there? We'll talk about that in a second. But you can already see this is starting to look like some strands. If I hide the sketch, all it is a shape with some rough highlights. Nothing grand. But where the strands come in, where you don't, like Sam was saying, you don't really want to focus on but you can think of them as, I'm sure you guys have heard this, you can start to think of them as ribbons. I'm going to turn this background off. So let's say we've got a little piece of material like that. I'm going to get rid of let me not do this on this layer. Okay, let's hide everything for now. Sketch is fine. We'll leave that up. So we've got our little strand, our little ribbon. Start thinking about these as ribbons because you're kind of boiling down. You've got the mass, the main shape, and then you can start adding ribbons to this. And a ribbon, let's just do it this way, can twist and turn and do all sorts of things. So if we're thinking about this, and if I were to make this a little bit more ribbon-like, we're curling this in the back, you can see, it's still adding up to that one plane that's just been flipped and twisted. Um, and that's exactly how I would approach these hair shapes. If I wanted to add a ribbon in here, if I wanted to add, something cascading, I might have it flip around like this and flip out. And then you can just build upon those shapes because a lot of times hair will act, in a similar fashion.
Yeah,
Like
that's a really good tip.
you can flip that out. And then you could have, another strand that's kind of doing its own thing. So as I'm thinking about these as ribbons, I'm not really getting too fussed about. Let me turn off the. I'm not getting too fussed about, does it look right just yet? I would be using a reference for this. But in this case, I just wanted to let you know that the ribbon method does work. You can also do the whole curls. Let's see if that's the. You can do curls the same way. We've done a little J curl already. Let's see what. Too many layers.
Also, want to say a quick shout out to Gus in the chat. What's going on, Gus? Good to see you. Long
Hey,
time no
what's up,
see.
Gus? All right, so I want to get rid of this real quick. And then if we wanted to just twist that shape, we could continue to twist it. And you could imagine how building out this into strands of hair, You don't have to do it this way, obviously. But if we're thinking about our shape for our hair, I'm gonna go ahead and build this out a little bit as if this were our curl. And then we'll leave the end of it kind of frayed. And then start thinking about this part's in shadow where it's coming back around. This part's in shadow. These are a little bit in shadow. And in these valleys and peaks, like this is sort of in a valley. That's a highlight. This is a potential highlight. Right where this is crossing over could be a highlight, like one or two little swipes. In the middle of this is a highlight. And then right at the end, you get another highlight. So you're starting to work on how that ribbon holds light as it twists. So just another way to think about making hair, and we'll bulk this out real quick. We'll add our layers back in. I'm going to work without. Let's see, is this the layer? There we go. I'm going to turn that off. I'm just going to work freestyle with this, but I'm thinking in the same way.
Yeah.
I've got this ribbon going on here. And underneath, there's going to be some shadows, probably a little bit of shadow here, probably shadow on top. Let's turn our background back on. This adds a lot. In fact, I want this to be brighter than it is, so let's go ahead and just do that. And we'll get to that wand in a moment. I'm just going to
Yeah.
make this
I
a
think the
little bit.
key thing kind of across all this is just how do you take something that at a glance seems very complicated and just simplify it. Get
Yeah,
the
biggest
biggest info you can.
yeah,
So
biggest shapes, smaller shapes, and just refine.
exactly.
And that doesn't
So
mean refine to like, infinite detail. That's
yeah.
not always necessary.
And I mean, looking at painters that are really good at implying things, impressionists, anyone who can kind of take something that most of us would look at really complex and then paint it in as few strokes as possible. A lot of times that helps see like, oh, how did this painter simplify
Mhm.
hair? And that's in the past has kind of had like little revelations for me of like, oh, you don't need to paint every strand. You can just kind of look at the major shapes.
Exactly. Yeah, and that along those lines, it's all problem solving. So if another
Hmm.
artist has solved that problem, you already have a clue on how you can solve it. You just have to kind of work backwards and figure out what did they do? How did
Yeah.
they address this?
And I've done that a lot. It's almost like it almost feels like cheating on a test sometimes. Like I got this problem. Oh, but I see what they did. Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
use some of
exactly.
that. Take some
Exactly.
of those answers.
But I mean that's what's so great. Well, the takeaway I have anyway, is everybody's going to do it differently. Even if if you copy their answer, and you might be able to copy it, you know, pretty good. Um, but the best solution is to have your own answer for that problem. Because you're going to relate to how you work a lot better than you don't maybe even know how they work. So now you're, kind of in that middle ground of, um, I see what they did. I don't know how they got there, but I'm going to do my best to figure out how I'm going to get there. And that will
Yeah.
sometimes inform your own style. Not to get into style because I'm one of those that I'm like, I don't know that I have a style, but there's definitely something going on. But right now, I'm just kind of building out these shapes. I'm not really concerned with how this is gonna, this isn't going to be a final image that I just kind of wanted to show you how this hair would work.
Hmm.
Did we leave? I did. Let me turn that back on. So I think we're getting there. We're starting to get a little bit. I did want to show we've got about what, maybe 12 so minutes before we wrap
Yeah.
up. I wanted to do a little bit of thing with the greebles. If you've ever heard of greebles, I like to think of you can do this with fantasy as well.
Okay.
I think it's called greebles, right? Like
Yeah, I
on
haven't.
Star Wars, you'll see all the little stuff they add to ships and the models and all that stuff.
Almost like implied tech detail, but
Exactly.
I don't think I've seen it really done with fantasy, but I'm curious to see your take on this.
Oh, you've seen it. You've seen
Okay.
it. It's just
I
what
just
I'm
didn't think of it
calling
as
it.
greebles.
Yeah. It's just what I'm calling it. So I've got this kind of worked up area that's, I don't know. it's its own thing. I don't know why I did that way. Let me get this out of here. So I've got this area and I'm just going to add a little bit more decoration to it. And I'm going to add a mask to this layer and then I will actually just come in here with the paint. Am I not sure? Oh, okay, there we go. All right, let's see if this works. It does. Okay. All right, so there's a little bit more decoration on this. Let's maybe paint this a little bit brassier. There we go. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm just going to make a color dodge layer. And while still thinking about light direction, I'm just going to start adding little scribbles in here, but only in the areas that I know are really going to pop with light. And I'm hoping with the scribbles, now it depends on what you want to do with it, that this is like almost engraving or, something that is a little bit more complex than these scribbles. But at a
Okay.
distance, it should read, like, oh, I see what's happening. That's more detail. And let me get in here. I'm just doing this, kind of doing little S's, little circular things. Nothing you're going to see up close. You're not going to be impressed. Well, you may not be impressed either way, but the point is, it does add detail to it pretty quickly, if that's what you're looking, to do. And making the brush smaller might help. You can kind of come here and scratch out some stuff. But that
I'm
just gives it,
certainly familiar with this.
yeah, to
Yes.
me, this is like a fantasy greeble because it's the same idea.
Yeah.
You're just putting in little things.
Little
That
scribbly S's that I'll do all the time.
Yeah, and it's not like it's really anything that's overly complicated. It just helps with the image. Now, what also helps is coming back in here and adding some of those same things as you fall off into shadow with a darker value.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely starts to get that sort of like intricately engraved look.
Exactly. That's sort of the point. You would have most of the shadow greebly things on the shadow side here, and some of these on you know, the side without shadow, the light side.
A
But that's
little
just
tip
one
for
way to do
chat.
that. Was
Sorry, a
that?
little tip for chat I was just going to say is I often try to zoom out just to make sure all my
Oh yeah.
things from a distance are reading correctly. And then if I get like zoomed in, to get all those details, I like just to check my work from zoomed out, but that often helps to
Yeah,
make
for
sure all the
sure.
big stuff is working.
Let's see. I've got a couple options. We don't have a lot of time, but let's do something with the wand since it's there. And I think this was called the wand. Oh, I called it. Ooh, I don't know if I should say that. The Willustrator wand,
Okay.
because if you hold this wand like a writing utensil, budding artists and designers can will any illustration into being just like they imagined. So that's what this wand is all about.
Is that
Um,
cheating, Wade?
hey, it's an enchanted item. It's a magical thing.
It's a tool.
Yeah, right.
I'll
It's
take
kind
one.
of
I'll
a.
take,
I mean, you're still having to will it, right? You're still
okay.
having. It's basically a stylus. That's all it is.
I'll take one of those and one of the helmets, please. Just invoice me later.
They're both on back order indefinitely. I'm
Oh,
sorry, Sam, but you can get on a wait list.
okay. As long as it can
Yeah.
be first on the waiting list.
Yeah. We'll see what we can do.
All right. Appreciate you.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna dip in. So we don't have a lot of time, obviously. Maybe we could make this look like plastic. I have separated a bunch of these out. I was gonna make this. We ran out a little bit of time. I was gonna do a whole thing with lighting. Let's see. Not sure what's happening here. Okay.
Purvis said
Oh,
that
I
gold's
see what's
looking
happening.
real.
The goal's looking real
Yeah,
nice.
gold was looking solid. I
Okay.
love painting gold.
Yeah, I think I remember you were big for a minute. I think you were a big red and gold fan, I think. Is
It's
that
a
wrong? Am I
solid
wrong about
color
that?
combo. I'm
Oh, it
also have a
is.
tendency to do kind of the blue orange. But I'd be curious in chat if anyone has any like favorite things to draw or paint. Because as far as materials go, I love
Good
painting gold.
question.
Also love painting leather.
Leather. Okay.
Yeah, there's
I
so much
didn't.
like texture and scratches and highlights and yeah, there's some
Yeah,
interesting
I
stuff
didn't.
that goes on with
I don't
leather.
know that I've seen a lot of your leather work. Now I want to see it. All right, so kind of gonna do this. We're gonna set this aside for a second, because Sam, I wanna put you, not really put you on the spot, but
Let's do it.
you've got, and I've seen you do it before, and I know we can do it in the time we have. You can you walk me through, and I think I know how to do it, but can you walk me through how you do your magic? You know your magic. You
Oh,
know what I'm talking
the
about.
magic effect.
The
Ooh,
magic effect.
it's been a while. Yeah,
I know it's multiple layers. We
it's
have a
you need a gradient map layer,
okay
and then you need a gradient that is
gradient
starts
map.
in I think it needs to at least start in black. I don't think it needs to end in white, but start yeah, there you
Okay.
go.
Okay.
And then you need a screen layer.
Okay. We'll make a
Um
screen layer. Does the layer order matter?
yes, there's a screen layer and then there's a normal layer that you paint on. I haven't it's funny that it's been so long since I've seen it or I've done it. Um
I think it
the screen
is.
layer is set to black or you fill it in with black.
Okay. Okay. I think we're getting there.
And then
Screen layer is black,
yeah, and
and then we
then
clip these, right?
I forget the layer order. I should
No, I
know
think I
this.
think this is it. I think this will work. We're gonna
And then you
try it.
draw on the normal layer.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna call this the paint layer.
And I typically draw with white and then I smudge it, which
Okay.
gets a
I'm gonna go.
gradient.
I just picked white. I'm going to choose just a normal hard round because I think we're going to use a smudge brush, right?
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
what I use
All
to
right.
kind of see
So
if this
let's
works.
let's see if this is going to work.
If I forgot
Uh,
it, I'm so sorry.
no, you're fine. Hey, look. I have oh, look, a magical smudge brush. Are we gonna do it?
Is it
Oh,
working?
it's a working. It's a little too smudgy, I think. I
Oh,
think I need to
wow.
turn maybe,
If
uh,
if anyone needs a refresher on that,
there
I
we
actually
go.
did make a tutorial about it that's on my Instagram Reels section. So if you look, there's like a magic one, but I almost was like, I can't reference my own video right now during the stream, but luckily it looks like I remembered.
Yeah, you remembered. It's just my smudge brush is a little wonky. The one I have for this anyway.
And just a little note to chat that you can see the levels of opacity correspond to the different tones in the gradient. So he has kind of this
Yeah,
darker
if I
red, but
open
he
this
also has
up.
this brighter yellow. So as you smudge it, it kind of covers the whole gradient there. So you get these kind of cool effects. Smudge brush was eating cheesy poofs. Yeah, exactly. Fiery
Yeah,
cheesy
so
poofs.
let's see. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Oops. Yeah, I painted on the mask layer. There we go. But yeah, as you smudge it, and if you had like a more default smudge brush and finger paint, it would look a little bit more magical.
Yeah, you can get some really cool wispy effects with the smudge tool, depending on how
Yeah.
much you're kind of obliterating those
Yeah, just
edges.
yeah, make sure that for those of you using the smudge brush, it can be a little taxing on the
Yeah,
system.
for sure.
So just be aware of that. This is almost like flames down here. This is almost pretty cool.
Yeah, I never use the smudge tool at too large of a size, otherwise my computer will weep.
Uh, yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Well, we're going to call it here, everyone. Hopefully, you got some good info out of all those examples we had going. Wade, thanks so much for this stream. It was a lot of fun. I think there's some really great information. And yeah, everyone in chat, thanks so much for joining us today. Wade, you got any little outro?
Just thanks to everybody for showing up and hanging out. Sorry for the outage, but we'll hopefully see you soon.
We'll definitely check out Wade's work, guys, and thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.